Hi, I'm Maya. They called me the family failure, told me I wasn't smart enough, ambitious enough, worthy enough. My brother's wife made sure everyone knew it. Then they lost everything. 9 years later, I stood on their porch, keys in hand, and said, "Hello, I'm your new landlord." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I was always the one who saw the world differently, not in some quirky, artsy way, but in the practical sense. Where others saw obstacles, I saw opportunities. Where they counted pennies, I dreamed of fortunes. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I grew up on the edges of Phoenix in a family that valued security over risk, safety over dreams. My brother Damon was the golden child, 6 years older than me, already climbing the corporate ladder at Dad's real estate firm by the time I was in high school. He married Vanessa when I was 16. She came from old money, the kind that whispers instead of talks, that measures worth in acreage and ancestry. From day one, she looked at me like I was a calculation. That didn't add up. The little dreamer, she'd call me at family gatherings, glass of Chardonnay balanced between manicured fingers. Still playing with her business ideas, how cute. Everyone would chuckle. I'd smile, but inside, I was building something they couldn't see. While Damon and Vanessa collected promotions and designer furniture, I collected rejection letters and business plans scribbled in notebooks. I didn't want the corner office at Dad's firm or the country club membership. I wanted to build something mine, something that would last. I remember the night everything changed. It was my 22nd birthday dinner at Callaway's, the only upscale restaurant in our suburb. I'd graduated with my business degree that spring, not the MBA from Wharton that Dad wanted, but my own path, a double major in finance and sustainable development from State. The table was set with crystal and silver, Dad at the head, Mom to his right, Damon and Vanessa across from me. I wore the turquoise earrings Mom had given me when I turned 18, trying to look the part of a Rodriguez even though I never quite fit the mold. "So what's the plan now, Maya?" Dad asked, cutting into his steak. "Damon can find you something at the firm, customer service maybe." His tone made it clear this was charity, not opportunity. I took a deep breath, hand steady on my water glass. "Actually, I've been developing a business plan, green housing developments focusing on sustainable materials and community integration. I'm meeting with some investors next week." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. Vanessa's laugh broke it, sharp as glass. "Oh honey, those hippie houses? Nobody wants those here. This isn't California. People want marble countertops and 3-car garages, not solar panels and community gardens." I looked to Mom for support, but she just stirred her soup, eyes down. Damon sighed, that familiar sound of disappointment. "Maya, this family has spent generations building a reputation in traditional real estate. You want to throw that away for what, composting toilets?" "It's more than that," I started, but Dad cut me off. "Enough with the dreams, Maya. It's time to join the real world, where success is measured, not imagined." Vanessa leaned forward, the diamond on her finger catching light like a warning. "Some people are just born followers, sweetie. Nothing wrong with that, we can't all be leaders." "I believe in this," I said quietly. "The market research, the development plans, the investor interest, it's all solid." Dad's fist hit the table, not loud enough to draw attention but enough to make the silverware jump. "This family has a legacy, Maya, and you're throwing it away for some tree-hugging fantasy." Then Damon cleared his throat, the way he did before delivering bad news. "We've been talking, Maya," he glanced at Vanessa, who nodded slightly. "As a family, we've decided it's time for some tough love." My stomach dropped, the air suddenly thick. "What does that mean?" "It means," Vanessa said, voice gentle like she was explaining something to a child, "that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is let someone fall so they learn to stand up properly." Dad pulled an envelope from his jacket. "There's $3,000 here, enough to get you started somewhere else. Phoenix isn't the place for your ideas, maybe Portland or Seattle, where people appreciate that sort of thing." I stared at the envelope. "You're asking me to leave?" "We're asking you to find your own path," Mom finally spoke, her voice soft. "Clearly, it's not with the family business." "This is my home," I said, but the words felt hollow already. "It's time to cut the cord, Maya," Damon said, firm like closing a business deal. "You're the family failure, not because you can't succeed, but because you won't try the Rodriguez way." The words hit like physical blows, family failure, the judgment final, certain. Vanessa reached across the table, patted my hand, her wedding ring cold against my skin. "Sometimes being the black sheep is a blessing in disguise, honey. You're just not cut out for real success." Then they stood, all at once, like a practiced exit. No hugs, no real goodbyes, just Vanessa's, "We expect you'll be packed by Friday," floating in the air as they left me sitting alone with an untouched slice of birthday cake and an envelope that felt like a severance payment. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there, hands flat on the white tablecloth, staring at the candle still burning in the center of the cake, the flame steady despite everything around it shifting. A server passed. "Can I get you anything else, miss?" I shook my head. Outside, the night air was warm, typical Arizona evening, stars obscured by city lights. My car, a used Honda with peeling paint, waited in the lot. As I walked toward it, I felt the weight of the envelope in my purse, but something else too, something lighter, almost like relief. The burden of trying to fit into their vision finally lifted. After the open house, I walked through the empty courtyard of Harmony Heights, thinking about how strange life could be, how a moment that shatters you can become the foundation you build upon. I'd been so focused on proving myself that I hadn't stopped to celebrate the journey. That night, I slept in the model unit at Harmony Heights, not my usual penthouse downtown, but this space that had once been the east wing of the Rodriguez estate, where family holidays had been celebrated, where I'd once been told I wasn't enough. The irony wasn't lost on me that I now owned the walls that had witnessed my rejection. Morning came with golden light streaming through the energy-efficient windows. I made coffee in the sustainable kitchen and sat on the balcony overlooking the desert garden we'd planted in place of the water-hungry lawn my father had insisted on maintaining even during drought restrictions. The contrast wasn't subtle, a perfect metaphor for different approaches to life. My phone rang. Maya Sustainable Communities had been selected as a finalist for the National Green Builder Award. My team's excitement buzzed through the speaker as my COO Eliza rattled off details about the ceremony in Chicago next month. I smiled, listening to her enthusiasm, but my mind kept drifting to Vanessa on her knees, to the look in my father's eyes when he saw what I'd built without him, without his name, without his approval. After the call, I walked the grounds of Harmony Heights, touching the walls that had once contained my childhood, the spaces now transformed into something new but with echoes of what had been. I wasn't one for sentimentality, but standing in what had been the grand foyer, now a community gathering space, I felt the weight of the journey. The Rodriguez way had always been about appearances, about legacy, about doing things as they'd always been done. My way had been about questioning, challenging, reimagining. It had cost me my family but had given me purpose. I traced my fingers along a reclaimed wood banister, wondering if it was possible to bridge such different worlds. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom, "Lunch this week." Simple, direct, a small offering. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen before typing, "Thursday, 1 p.m., with the address of a small cafe near my office. Not a rejection, not an embrace, just an opening. That Thursday, I arrived early, chose a table by the window, watched people pass on the sidewalk outside, lives intersecting briefly then continuing on separate paths. Mom arrived precisely on time, her hair newly styled, her clothes carefully chosen. She looked smaller somehow, less imposing than the woman who had sat silent at that fateful dinner 9 years ago. "This is nice," she said, settling into her chair, eyes taking in the sustainable decor, the living wall of herbs, the reclaimed wood tables, all hallmarks of my company's aesthetic. "One of yours?" I nodded. "Our first commercial renovation. The owner gave us creative control in exchange for reduced rates." She smiled tentatively. "It feels like you, peaceful, innovative." We ordered lunch, the conversation careful, circling important topics without diving in, until finally, over coffee, she reached across the table, almost touching my hand but stopping just short. "Your father has filed for bankruptcy protection," her voice low. "Personal, not just business this time." I set my cup down slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." And I was surprised to find I meant it. "He won't ask for help," she continued. "His pride, you know how he is." I did know. The Rodriguez pride had shaped us all in different ways, had driven me to succeed, had kept my father from adapting, had silenced my mother for decades. "What are you asking, Mom?" She looked up, eyes direct for the first time. "Nothing. I'm not asking for anything, Maya. I just thought you should know." A pause. "We're moving to Tucson next month. Your Uncle Marco has offered your father a position in his firm." "Starting over," I said, understanding the difficulty of that. "Especially for a man like my father." "Yes," she nodded. "At 68. I felt an unexpected surge of respect for him, not for his past actions but for his refusal to give up completely. "Uncle Marco is a good man." "He is," she agreed, then hesitated. "Maya, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm proud of you, not just your success, but your resilience, your vision." The words I'd longed to hear for years landed softly between us, too late to heal the original wound but not too late to matter. Thank you, I said simply. We parted with a tentative hug, the first physical contact in almost a decade. It was awkward, brief, but it was something, a tiny bridge across a vast canyon. Back at my office, I stared out the window at the Phoenix skyline, the buildings glinting in the afternoon sun. Like my family, the city was transforming, slowly, painfully, but inevitably. I pulled up the investment portfolio for Maya Sustainable Communities, scrolled through properties, current projects, future acquisitions until I found it, a small parcel of land in Tucson, recently listed, perfect for a satellite office for my expanding company. I clicked Approve Acquisition, not as a peace offering, not as charity, but as a practical business decision with a personal undertone. I would need people to run that office, locals who understood the area, the market, the community. My finger hovered over my father's contact information, stored but never used since that dinner. The impulse to call, to offer not forgiveness but opportunity, was strong, but not yet, not until I was certain it was business, not emotion driving the decision. That evening, as I walked through my downtown penthouse, walls bare of family photos, shelves displaying achievements not memories, I realized how compartmentalized my life had become, success in one box, rejection in another, never allowing them to touch, never examining how deeply one had shaped the other. It was time to integrate those pieces, not to forget, but to acknowledge how the worst moment of my life had ultimately created the best version of me. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting of my executive team, gathered them in our sustainable boardroom, walls made of compressed agricultural waste salvaged during our second project. We're accelerating the Tucson expansion, I announced. I want boots on the ground next month, site selection, community engagement, local hiring. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Any particular reason for the rush? The market analysis suggested Q4 would be optimal. I met her gaze directly. Sometimes opportunities don't follow market predictions. I have a feeling about Tucson. It wasn't a lie, just not the complete truth. The team nodded, trusted my instincts. They'd followed me through riskier decisions, had seen my feelings translate to successful ventures more often than not. They didn't question, just started planning, adjusting timelines, reassigning resources. After the meeting, Eliza lingered. You've never mentioned Tucson before last month. Now it's suddenly priority one. What's really going on, Maya? We'd worked together since the beginning. She'd been the first person to join my company when it was just a concept and determination. She'd earned the right to ask. My parents are moving there, I said finally. Starting over after the bankruptcy. Her expression softened with understanding. And you're what? Extending an olive branch? I shook my head. Creating an opportunity, not a handout. There's a difference. There is, she agreed. But Maya, after everything they did, are you sure this is about business, not reconciliation? I considered. Her question looked out at the city spread below us. Why can't it be both? The best decisions usually are personal and practical, emotional and logical. I turned back to her. We're not just building houses, Eliza. We're building second chances. She smiled. Now that sounds like a marketing campaign. I laughed, the tension breaking. Don't you dare put that on a billboard. The Tucson project moved quickly. We secured a prime location for our office, started interviewing local talent, arranged community forums to introduce our vision. It felt right, felt like expansion not just of the company but of possibility. 3 weeks later, I found myself driving to Tucson, early morning desert stretching around me, mountains in the distance, the road familiar yet different, like returning to a memory but with new eyes. I wasn't visiting my parents, wasn't ready for that step yet, but I wanted to see the city they'd chosen for their fresh start, wanted to understand what had drawn them there. The address my mother had shared led to a modest single-story home in an aging neighborhood, nothing like the Spanish colonial estate they'd lost, nothing like the luxury they'd surrounded themselves with for decades. I drove past slowly, not stopping, just observing, a moving truck in the driveway, my father directing workers, his posture still proud despite everything, my mother arranging plants on the small porch, trying to create beauty in this new, reduced circumstance. I continued. Driving, not ready to be seen, not yet. My next stop was the site we'd purchased for our Tucson headquarters, a former warehouse with good bones and excellent solar potential. Our architects had already drafted preliminary plans for transformation, the building, like my family, like me, in need of reimagining. Standing in the empty warehouse, dust motes dancing in the beams of light streaming through dirty windows, I called Damon. It was time. The phone rang 4 times. I almost hung up, then his voice, Maya? Surprised, cautious. I'm in Tucson. I said. Looking at property. A pause. Business expansion? Yes, we're opening a satellite office here. Looking for local talent, people who understand the market. Another, longer pause. Are you calling to check on them? They're settling in. It's an adjustment, but they're okay. I'm calling about you, Damon. The words surprised even me. What are your plans now? His laugh was hollow. Plans? I'm working for Marco alongside Dad, selling traditional real estate the way we always have. Bitterness crept into his tone. The Rodriguez way, remember? How's that working out? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Silence. Then, it's not, he admitted. The market has changed. People want what you're building, not what we're selling. Dad doesn't see it, won't see it, but I do. I took a deep breath. I'm looking for a local director, someone who knows Tucson real estate, who has connections, who understands both traditional approaches and where the market is heading. Maya, his voice cautious. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying I have a position available, if you're interested. Interview like anyone else, no guarantees, no nepotism, but an opportunity. Why would you do this, after everything? I looked around the empty warehouse, seeing not what it was but what it could become. Because I built this company to create something better, not just buildings, but chances, legacies, opportunities. That's what Maya Sustainable Communities means. And Vanessa, he asked quietly. She was the cruelest to you. This isn't about forgiveness, Damon. It's about growth, yours, mine, everyone's. Vanessa has her own journey. He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, send me the job description. I'll apply properly through your HR portal. I will, I said, and we left it at that. No dramatic reconciliation, no promises, just possibility hanging in the air between us. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my hotel room, watching the sun set behind the Tucson mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I thought about cycles, how we can spend our lives repeating patterns or breaking them. How sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't family but yourself, for believing you weren't enough, for accepting their judgment as truth. My phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa, unexpected, jarring. Damon told me about the job opening. Is this some kind of revenge, making him work for you? I stared at the message, feeling old anger flare then fade, typing carefully, this is business. Not personal. He's qualified, he needs work, my company needs local expertise. Simple as that. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I don't understand you, Maya. I smiled at that, replied, you never did. That was the problem. The next morning, I met with local contractors, toured potential development sites, arranged meetings with city officials about permits, zoning requirements, sustainability incentives. By evening, I was exhausted but satisfied, the Tucson expansion taking shape in my mind as clearly as the Phoenix projects had years ago. I was about to head back to my hotel when my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something prompted me to. Maya Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Westlake Hospital in Tucson. Your father, Joseph Rodriguez, has been admitted with symptoms of a heart attack. You're listed as next of kin. The world tilted, memory overlapping with present. My father. Strong, stubborn, fallible, now vulnerable. Is he stable? Yes, but they're running tests. Would you like to speak with his doctor? 20 minutes later, I was walking through hospital doors, the antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the squeak of shoes on linoleum all creating that unique atmosphere of pause between life and crisis. My mother sat in the waiting room, looking small, her hands twisting a tissue, Damon beside her, Vanessa nowhere to be seen. Mom looked up, saw me, froze. Maya, who told you? I'm still listed as next of kin, I said, sitting across from them. Old paperwork, I guess. Damon nodded. Dad never changed it, even after everything. We sat in uncomfortable silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between us, until a doctor approached. Rodriguez family? He stabilized. It wasn't a heart attack but a severe arrhythmia. We want to keep him overnight for observation, run some additional tests. Can we see him? Mom asked. Briefly, one at a time, the doctor looked between us. Who's first? Mom and Damon looked at me. I shook my head. You go, Mom. I'll wait. As she followed the doctor, Damon turned to me. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did, I said simply, because despite everything, he was still my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, to check the foundation before buying property, to stand my ground even when surrounded by doubt. That last lesson more valuable than he'd ever intended. He'll be embarrassed, Damon said. You seeing him like this, weak. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, the lines around his eyes, the slump in his shoulders, the weight of trying to be what our father wanted, what Vanessa expected, what the Rodriguez name demanded. We're all weak sometimes, Damon. That's not failure, it's human. He nodded slowly. When did you get so wise? Around the time I was sleeping in my car, figuring out who I was without any of you. His head snapped up. What? After that dinner, I was homeless for a while. Lived in my car, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet while building my business plan. Did you never wonder where I went? Horror crossed his face. Dad said you were staying with friends from college, that you were fine. And you believed him because it was easier, not an accusation, just a fact. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have checked. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's the past. We're here now. Mom returned, eyes red. He's asking for you, Maya. I stood, smoothed my jacket, walked the long corridor to his room, steeled myself for whatever came next. The door opened to a dimly lit space, machines beeping softly, my father in the bed, looking older, smaller than I remembered. His eyes found mine as I entered. Maya, his voice raspy, you came. I moved to his bedside, not touching him, not yet. I was in Tucson anyway. He nodded as if this made perfect sense. Your mother told me about your company, your success. I waited, not filling the silence with forgiveness or accusation, letting him find his own words. I was wrong, he said finally. About you, about your vision, about everything. Yes, you were, I agreed, not to hurt him but because truth was necessary for whatever came next. He closed his eyes briefly. The Rodriguez way is failing, has been for years. While you built something revolutionary, I was too proud to see it, too stubborn to change. It's not too late, I said. To adapt, to see differently. His eyes opened, studied my face. You look like your grandmother Isabella. She was the true visionary in the family, you know. Built the first Rodriguez properties during the Depression when no one thought a woman could lead a company. I hadn't known that piece of family history, had never heard him speak of his mother with such respect. Tell me about her. And he did. For the next 20 minutes, he shared stories of Isabella Rodriguez, immigrant, entrepreneur, visionary, who had created the foundation he had been too afraid to reinvent, too caught in tradition to evolve. The woman whose blood ran through my veins, whose spirit perhaps had guided me without my knowing. As he spoke, I realized something fundamental. My rejection from the family hadn't severed my connection to this legacy, had actually purified it, distilled it to its most essential quality, innovation without fear. I wasn't separate from the Rodriguez legacy, I was its truest expression. When he finished speaking, exhaustion evident in his face, I stood. Rest. I'll come back tomorrow. He caught my hand, his grip weak but insistent. The company you're building, it should have Rodriguez in the name. It's what Isabella would have wanted. I gently removed my hand. My company has the name it needs, Dad, the one I built it under, the one that represents me, not expectations, not traditions, not limitations. Just possibility. He nodded once, acceptance, not agreement. You always were the strongest of us all. Outside his room, I leaned against the wall, took a deep breath, centered myself before returning to the waiting area where Damon and Mom sat in uncomfortable silence. Vanessa had arrived while I was gone, her designer purse clutched like a shield, her eyes widening when she saw me. Is he okay? She asked, not meeting my gaze. Stable, resting. You can see him now. She nodded stiffly, disappeared down the hallway, leaving the three of us, the remains of the Rodriguez family, in a tableau of awkward reconnection. Will you stay in Tucson a few days? Mom asked, hope in her voice. Just until we know he's all right? I considered my schedule, the meetings waiting in Phoenix, the projects needing attention, the life I'd built separate from them. Yes, I said. I'll stay. That night in my hotel room, I called Eliza, explained the situation. She reorganized my calendar without question, understanding that some moments transcend business, even for someone as focused as I had become. I sat by the window, looking out at the desert night, the stars brighter here away from Phoenix's lights. 9 years ago, they had cast me out, called me failure. Today, I owned their former home, had built a company revolutionizing their industry, had created my own definition of success, one that wasn't measured in their terms but in impact, in vision, in contribution. Now they were the ones starting over, learning to navigate reduced circumstances while I expanded my reach. It would have been easy to feel vindicated, to see their struggles as karma's perfect circle. But I felt something more complex, not pity, not forgiveness exactly, but perspective. Understanding that success and failure are temporary conditions, not permanent identities. That the labels we accept can either limit us or liberate us, depending on how we carry them. I opened my laptop, began typing, not emails, not business plans, but a journal entry, something I hadn't done since those early days in my car when writing had been my only outlet. They called me the family failure, I wrote. But failure isn't who you are. It's just something that happens on the way to becoming who you're meant to be. I stayed in Tucson 3 days longer than planned, the desert air clear and sharp in the mornings, misty with possibility. The hospital became a strange new center of gravity for our fractured family, each of us orbiting at different distances, my father improving slowly, his color returning, his voice strengthening, but something fundamental had shifted in him, a certain hardness gone, replaced by quiet reflection. On the third morning, I arrived early, before visiting hours technically began, but the nurses recognized me now, nodded as I passed. One whispered, "He's been asking for you." I found him sitting up, reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing papers spread across his tray table. "Working from your hospital bed?" I asked, setting down my coffee on the side table. "Some things never change." He looked up, managed a small smile. "Old habits, but different work." He gestured to the papers. "I've been studying your company. Reading everything I could find, articles, financial disclosures, sustainability reports." I raised an eyebrow, picked up one of the printouts, recognized it as our latest environmental impact statement. "Research or reconnaissance?" "Education," he said simply. "I wanted to understand what you built, how you did it, where I went wrong." I sat in the visitor chair, leather portfolio in my lap containing the contracts for our Tucson property, the development plans, the projections. "And what have you learned?" That the future arrived while I was looking backward. His voice held no bitterness, just clarity. "That innovation isn't abandoning legacy, it's extending it. That sustainable isn't just about environment, it's about endurance, something the Rodriguez business lacked." I nodded, surprised by his insight. "The old models aren't viable anymore. Not with resource constraints, changing climate, community needs." "I see that now." He gathered the papers, arranged them neatly, his hands still maintaining that precision that had once built an empire. "Maya, I've been thinking about what comes next for me." "Marco's firm?" I suggested, the path of least resistance, the comfortable, familiar option. He shook his head. "No, that's a step backward. I'm thinking about consultation, specifically in transition, helping traditional development firms evolve toward sustainability, not just environmentally but economically." I stared at him, this man who had once thrown me out for suggesting exactly this approach. "You want to be a sustainability consultant?" "I want to be useful," he said, meeting my eyes directly. "I spent 40 years building expertise, relationships, knowledge, all in service of an outdated model, but the foundation is transferable, the connections valuable if redirected properly." The irony wasn't lost on me, my father reinventing himself at 68, using the very principles he'd rejected when I proposed them 9 years ago. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt something unexpected: respect. That's actually a solid business model. There's significant demand for transition expertise, particularly from established firms facing resistance from shareholders. He nodded. "Exactly. They trust other traditional developers to guide them more than young innovators, no offense. They need someone who speaks their language, who understands their concerns." "And who would you consult for?" Keeping my tone neutral, professional. He hesitated, looked down at his hands, then back at me. "Ideally, for Maya sustainable communities. As a bridge between your vision and traditional firms resistant to change." The proposal hung in the air between us, unexpected yet somehow inevitable. I opened my portfolio, removed the development plans for our Tucson project, placed them on his tray. "This is our newest venture, the former Westside warehouse conversion to mixed-use sustainable development. Residential, commercial, community spaces." He studied the plans with a developer's eye. "Good bones, challenging electrical grid connection but workable. The solar orientation is excellent." His fingers traced the property boundaries. "This neighboring lot would make more sense for your community garden, better sun exposure, less shadow impact." "It wasn't available," I said, watching him slip back into the role he knew best: problem-solving, optimization. "It is now," he replied. "Foreclosure last week. The owner is Pinnacle Bank. I know the VP of Commercial Assets. We've worked together for decades." This was the Joseph Rodriguez I remembered: connections, resources, knowledge. He still had value, not because of his name but because of his experience. I considered his proposal, not as a daughter but as a CEO evaluating potential talent. "We have a strict ethics policy, environmental commitments, community engagement requirements." "I've read them," he said. "I can work within them, need to work within them if we're going to create something lasting." I noticed his choice of words: we, our, not the separation of your company, my expertise, but collaboration, the first hint he'd given that he saw us as potentially connected. Again, not through family obligation but through shared purpose. I'll need a formal proposal, outline of services, projected value, specific contributions you could make to our Tucson development. He nodded, understanding this wasn't forgiveness, this was business. I'll have it to you before discharge. Day after tomorrow. I stood, gathered my portfolio, left the plans with him. This isn't a commitment, just an opening. It's more than I deserve, he said softly. I paused at the door. This isn't about deserving, Dad. It's about creating value, moving forward, making something meaningful. That's all I've ever wanted. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Vanessa, her arms full of fresh flowers, expensive arrangement, hospital. Gift shop didn't carry anything that elaborate. She must have had them delivered. She stopped short when she saw me, clutching the flowers like a shield. Maya, she nodded stiffly. Early visit. Business discussion, I replied, not elaborating. She shifted uncomfortably. I see. Well, she gestured toward the door. I stepped aside, but something made me pause. He's different, you know. Changed by all this. Her perfect eyebrows drew together. Joseph? He's just weak from the medication. Once he's home, he'll be back to normal. I studied her, this woman who had once wielded such power over my self-worth, now seemed smaller somehow, limited by her own narrow vision. Normal is gone, Vanessa. For all of us. That's not tragedy, it's opportunity. She blinked, confusion crossing her features. I don't understand why you're here, what you want from us. I don't want anything from you, I said, realizing it was true. I'm building something I believe in. If Dad wants to contribute his expertise, that's a business decision, not a family one. You're offering him a job, disbelief colored her voice. After everything? I'm considering his proposal, I corrected. Value is value, regardless of history. She shook her head, flowers trembling slightly in her grip. You're just trying to humiliate us, make us work for you, show everyone how far we've fallen while you've risen. I felt a flash of the old anger, then let it go, recognizing her accusation for what it was, projection of her own tactics onto me. Not everyone operates from wounded pride, Vanessa. Some of us make decisions based on potential, not past. I walked away, her silence following me down the corridor, more effective than any retort would have been. Outside the hospital, the Tucson morning had blossomed into brilliant sunshine. I slipped on sunglasses, checked my watch. I had a meeting with the city planner in 30 minutes to discuss permits for the warehouse conversion, plenty of time to grab coffee and center myself before shifting back to full business mode. The local cafe I discovered 2 days ago was busy but not crowded. I ordered, placed my phone face down on the table, a conscious choice to be present for these 5 minutes before diving back into work. The barista called my name. I collected my drink, turned to leave when a voice stopped me. Maya Rodriguez? I turned, found myself facing a woman about my age, stylish, professional, curious expression. Yes? She extended her hand. Carmen Diaz. I'm the sustainability director for Tucson Metro. Sorry to interrupt your morning, but I recognized you from your keynote at the Southwest Green Building Conference last year. We shook hands, her grip firm, confident. Nice to meet you, Carmen. What can I do for you? I heard rumors Maya Sustainable Communities is expanding to Tucson. Wanted to introduce myself, offer any assistance navigating local regulations, incentive programs. I gestured to an empty table. Join me? I have about 15 minutes before my next meeting. Those 15 minutes turned into 30. Carmen proved to be knowledgeable, passionate about sustainable development and, crucially, connected to every department that could either accelerate or obstruct our Tucson project. By the time we exchanged contact information, I had a new ally in the complex world of municipal development. One last thing, Carmen said as we prepared to leave. The city is launching a Green Jobs Initiative training program, looking for partners. Would Maya Sustainable Communities be interested in providing internships, expertise perhaps? I thought of my father's proposal, of Damon's potential application, of the Rodriguez legacy reimagined through a lens of sustainability and community. Absolutely. Send me the details. We're committed to building more than just structures, we build futures. She smiled. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, site visits, contractor negotiations. By evening, I was exhausted but energized, the Tucson project taking shape not just on paper but in relationships, commitments, shared vision. As I drove back to my hotel, the desert sunset painting the mountains in impossible colors, I found myself thinking about legacy, not the kind you inherit but the kind you create. My phone rang, Eliza's name flashing on the screen. Maya, we have a situation with Harmony Heights, her voice tight, controlled. The community board is pushing back on the final phase, claiming the shared workspace design violates some obscure historical preservation clause. I sighed, not entirely surprised. We'd faced similar resistance before. Send me the details. I'll fly back tomorrow morning. There's more, she continued. A reporter from the Business Journal called, asking about the connection between Maya Sustainable Communities and the Rodriguez Development Group, specifically if our Tucson expansion is related to your family's bankruptcy. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did you tell them? That our expansion plans predated any changes in the Rodriguez company, that business decisions are made based on market analysis, not personal connections. Good. I pulled into the hotel parking lot. Forward me the reporter's contact information. I'll handle it directly. Maya, her voice softened, is everything okay there? With your family? I considered the question, the complicated answer the last few days had revealed. It's evolving, not healing exactly, but changing into something different, something potential. Be careful, concern evident in her tone. Business and family are a volatile mix. I know, I said, thinking of all the failed family businesses I'd studied, the cautionary tales of emotion overriding judgment. I'm proceeding with clear boundaries, open eyes. After hanging up, I sat in my car for several minutes, watching the last light fade from the sky, stars emerging one by one. Thinking about transformation, about businesses, about relationships, about the narratives we construct to explain success and failure, about the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and who we can become. The next morning, I was preparing to check out when my phone buzzed, a text from Damon, Dad's being discharged today. Can you stop by the hospital before you leave? I hesitated, my flight back to Phoenix departed in 3 hours, the community board issue needed attention, the reporter needed management, responsibilities pulling me in different directions. The old Maya would have chosen business without question, would have seen family as a distraction from the path to success, but something had shifted these past days. I texted back, I'll be there at 10, then called Eliza. Reschedule my flight to the afternoon. I need a few more hours in Tucson. The hospital was quiet mid-morning, the drama of emergencies, the bustle of shift changes absent. I found my father dressed, sitting in a chair by the window rather. Then in the bed, progress. My mother arranging his discharge papers, Damon standing awkwardly by the door, no sign of Vanessa. Maya, my father's face brightened when he saw me. I wasn't sure you'd make it. I rearranged some things, I set my briefcase down. How are you feeling? Ready to leave this place? He gestured to the folder on the bedside table. I've completed that proposal we discussed. Comprehensive, detailed, as requested. I picked up the folder, tucked it into my briefcase. I'll review it when I get back to Phoenix. He nodded, understanding I wasn't making promises, just acknowledging receipt. My mother finished with the paperwork, approached hesitantly. We're heading home now. The nurse is bringing a wheelchair, hospital policy. An awkward silence fell. None of us quite knowing the protocol for this moment, the space between estrangement and reconciliation unmapped territory. Finally, Damon spoke. Dad's going to need some help for a few weeks, doctor's orders. Minimal stress, supervised recovery. I understood what wasn't being said, the unspoken question about my involvement, my responsibility. My mother watching me carefully, my father staring out the window, pretending not to listen. I'm heading back to Phoenix today, I said, watching their faces fall slightly. But I'll be back next week for the Tucson project launch. Our development team is setting up temporary offices until construction begins. That's good, my mother said, relief in her voice. Very good. The nurse arrived with the wheelchair, my father protested briefly, then acquiesced, hospital rules trumping Rodriguez pride. I stepped back, watched as they helped him settle. Damon collected the small bag of belongings, my mother fussed with the discharge instructions, creating a familiar tableau of family care that I observed now from the periphery, not fully included, not entirely excluded. As they prepared to leave, my father gestured me closer. I stepped forward, not certain what to expect. Maya, his voice low, meant only for me. The family name can be a burden or a foundation. It's what you build on it that matters. I nodded, understanding he wasn't asking me to forgive, forget, return to the fold. He was acknowledging my path, recognizing its validity, offering not reconciliation but respect. Safe recovery. I'll be in touch about the proposal. Outside the hospital, I watched them drive away, my father in the passenger seat of Damon's Modest sedan, a far cry from the luxury vehicles that had once defined Rodriguez's success. I didn't feel triumph at their reduced circumstances, just awareness of life's unpredictable cycles, the inevitable rise and fall, the constant opportunity for reinvention. My phone buzzed, an email from the Business Journal reporter requesting a statement about the Rodriguez connection. I stood in the sunshine, considered my response, drafted something on my phone, then paused, deleted it all, sent instead, happy to discuss Maya's sustainable community's vision for the future of development in the Southwest, including our Tucson expansion. Available for interview this Thursday. The past couldn't be changed, shouldn't be denied, but it didn't have to define the conversation moving forward. I would acknowledge my roots without being bound by them, explain my journey without dwelling on rejection, focus on what we were building now, not what had crumbled before. The flight back to Phoenix gave me time to review my father's proposal, surprisingly thorough, impressively insightful. He'd outlined specific contributions he could make to our Tucson project, leveraging relationships, explaining potential pitfalls, offering solutions based on decades of experience. There was value here, undeniable expertise untangled from ego, shaped now by humility and awareness. It wasn't sentimentality making me consider his offer, it was pragmatism. Eliza met me at the airport, drove me directly to Harmony Heights where the community board waited, tense faces concerned about change, resistant to innovation. I listened to their objections calmly, recognized their fears, addressed each point. With evidence, examples, success stories from our other developments. By meeting's end, they weren't fully convinced, but they were open, reconsideration rather than rejection. Progress. Later in my office, overlooking the Phoenix skyline now tinged with sunset gold, I signed the documents approving my father's consultancy agreement, limited scope, clear deliverables, explicit boundaries. A professional relationship, not a personal absolution. I wasn't hiring him because he was my father, I was hiring his expertise, his connections, his understanding of traditional development that could now serve innovation. Eliza reviewed the contract, raised an eyebrow. You're sure about this? It's a business decision, I said. He brings value, specific knowledge we need for the Tucson market. And the family connection? Is irrelevant to his performance. I met her gaze. Directly. We hire based on merit, contribution, potential, not last names. If anything, I've held him to a higher standard than other consultants. She nodded. And Damon's application? HR forwarded it this morning. I tapped my fingers on the desk. Considering. Standard interview process, evaluation based on qualifications, experience, fit with our culture. No preferential treatment. And if he qualifies? Then he qualifies, I said simply. We hire the best people, regardless of history. That evening, I walked through Harmony Heights alone, the former Rodriguez estate now transformed into a vibrant community, families in the shared gardens. Children playing in the sustainable playground designed to capture energy from movement, older residents tending the community herb gardens. A vision realized, not just of buildings but of connection, of purpose. In what had once been my father's study, now a community library, a young woman sat surrounded by architectural books, sketching intently. I paused, watched her work, recognized the fierce concentration, the vision taking shape on paper, reminiscent of my own early drawings. I approached quietly. That's an interesting design. She looked up, startled, then recognized me, her eyes widening. Ms. Rodriguez. I'm sorry, am I not supposed to be here after hours? I smiled, sat across from her. The spaces are meant to be used. That's the point. What are you working on? A concept for affordable student housing integrated with community elder support. She turned her sketch toward me. The idea is shared resources, reduced isolation, mutual benefit. I studied the drawing, rough but innovative, showing potential. You're a resident here? She nodded. My grandmother and I share one of the family units. She watches my daughter while I finish my architecture degree at night. What's your name? Elena Suarez. Well, Elena Suarez, Maya Sustainable Communities offers internships to architecture students with vision. I handed her my card. Send your portfolio to this email, attention to me personally. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the card. Thank you. I never expected, this is incredible. Opportunity should be based on talent, not connections, I said, thinking of my own journey. Sometimes the most innovative ideas come from people who've had to find unconventional paths. Walking back to my car, I thought about cycles, about second chances, about the difference between earning something and deserving it, about how sometimes the most important opportunity is simply the space to prove yourself, about how rejection can either define you or refine you. 9 years ago, my family had called me a failure, had closed doors, had limited my options, but in doing so had inadvertently opened a path to something more authentic, more meaningful, more impactful than following their predetermined route would ever have allowed. Now I stood not just successful but purposeful, not just wealthy but influential, creating opportunity for others the way I'd wished someone had done for me. The next morning, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, watching Phoenix wake up, golden light spilling across the desert city, highlighting the sustainable developments that now punctuated the skyline like beacons of change. My phone buzzed. A text from Damon, HR scheduled my interview for next week. Thank you for the opportunity. I typed back, it's not a gift. It's a chance. Earn it. Then added after a moment, you can. Setting down my phone, I looked at the city spread before me, the vision becoming reality day by day, brick by brick. Choice by choice. They had called me the family failure, had rejected my ideas, my path, my worth, had tried to define me by their limitations. But I had refused that definition, had instead built something lasting, something meaningful, something that transformed not just skylines but lives. The Rodriguez legacy wasn't ending with my father's bankruptcy, it was evolving through my innovation. Perhaps through Damon's adaptation, through my father's late-life reinvention. Failure wasn't a person, it was a moment, a step, a necessary component of any journey worth taking. I hadn't succeeded despite rejection, I had succeeded because of it, the obstacles forcing me to build stronger foundations, clearer vision, deeper purpose. I smiled into the morning light, whispering, they called me the family failure, but failure was never my name. It was just a door closing so I could build my own house. 3 months passed in a blur of progress, the Tucson project breaking ground ahead of schedule, my father's connections proving valuable, expediting permits, securing local support, navigating political landscapes. He worked remotely mostly. Consulting via video calls, his health improving gradually, his expertise undeniable. He never overstepped, never presumed familiarity, maintained professional boundaries as clearly defined in our agreement. Damon surprised everyone, most of all himself, excelling in his role as Community Engagement Director for the Tucson development. His natural charm, once used to sell luxury properties, now redirected toward building trust with neighborhood associations, environmental groups, local businesses. He'd found his rhythm in this new context, his texts became more frequent, sharing small victories, challenges, insights. Only Vanessa remained distant, aloof, declining invitations to project events, avoiding any direct contact with me. I didn't push, didn't need her approval or participation, but I noticed the strain it created between her and Damon, the tension evident whenever her name arose in conversation. One Tuesday morning, I landed in Tucson for our monthly in-person project review, stepped off the plane to find Damon waiting in the terminal, unexpected. Maya, he moved forward, took my carry-on bag without asking, change of plans for today. I raised an eyebrow. The site visit? Postponed until this afternoon, he guided me toward the exit. Something more important came up. More important than reviewing construction progress, skepticism in my voice, nothing trumped project milestones in my carefully structured schedule. He didn't answer, just led me to his car, opened the passenger door. Trust me, just this once. I hesitated, then relented, curious about what could prompt this deviation from protocol. We drove in silence through Tucson morning traffic, until the buildings thinned, replaced by saguaro cacti, rocky outcroppings, the desert landscape opening around us. Damon, where exactly are we going? You'll see, was all he said, turning onto a private road that wound up into the foothills. The road ended at a metal gate. He punched a code into a keypad, the gate swung open, revealing a long driveway leading to a modest but beautiful adobe-style home nestled against the hillside, photovoltaic panels gleaming on the roof, rainwater harvesting system visible at the corners, native landscaping surrounding the structure. What is this place? I asked as we parked. Dad's new house, Damon cut the engine. Well, technically Mom and Dad's, but it was his vision, his design, his project these past months. I stepped out of the car, squinted in the bright sunlight, studying the property, recognizing sustainable elements, passive solar orientation, xeriscaping, thoughtful water management. He built this. With some help, Damon smiled slightly. Come on, he's waiting. I followed him up the path to the front door, made of reclaimed wood with metal inlays. Before he could knock, it swung open, my father standing there, gray hair neatly trimmed, color in his cheeks, a vitality I hadn't seen in years. Maya, he nodded. Thank you for coming. I wasn't exactly given a choice, I glanced at Damon, who shrugged unapologetically. Come in, please. My father stepped aside, revealing an interior that took my breath away, open concept, filled with natural light, earthen floors, sustainable materials everywhere, but with a warmth, a character that spoke of home, not just efficiency. He led us through the house, pointing out features with quiet pride. Rammed earth walls for thermal mass, south-facing windows with appropriate overhangs for seasonal solar gain, cross-ventilation eliminating need for traditional air conditioning, greywater recycling for the native plant garden. His hand ran along a countertop. Recycled glass concrete counters, local materials, local labor, all of it. I turned slowly, taking it all in. This is impressive. When did you have time to create all this? After the hard episode, I had plenty of time to think, he gestured. To a table covered with drawings, plans. I started sketching first, just ideas, then it became more structured, more real. Then I found a small piece of land, contacted a contractor who specializes in sustainable building. We broke ground 2 months ago, just finished last week. My mother appeared from a back room, wiping her hands on a cloth. Maya, you're here, good. She seemed more relaxed than I'd seen her in years, more present. Joseph wanted you to be the first to see it completed. I met my father's eyes, understanding dawning. You built a sustainable house. I built a sustainable home, he corrected. Using everything I've learned from you, from your company, from my own research. It's small, efficient, but comfortable, a completely different approach than anything I would have considered before. We stepped out onto the back patio, overlooking the desert valley, Tucson shimmering in the distance. My father handed me a folder. These are the specifications, energy calculations, water usage projections, building material sourcing, everything documented, measured, verified. I opened it, scanned the first page, realized what I was looking at. You're applying for green building certification. He nodded. The highest level possible. Preliminary assessments suggest we'll achieve it. Why? I asked, the question simple but layered with meaning. He considered before answering. To prove to myself it could be done. To understand firsthand what you've been creating all these years. To live my values, not just consult about them. He paused. And to show you that an old developer can learn, can change, can grow. The gesture moved me more than any apology could have, this tangible evidence of transformation, not words but action, not promises but proof. It's beautiful, I said finally. Thoughtful, intelligent, sustainable in the truest sense. There's one more thing, my mother said, exchanging glances with my father. Show her, Joseph. He led me to what appeared to be a home office, a desk, computer setup, bookshelves, but then he pressed a hidden panel, revealing a second room. Behind, a workshop filled with models, sustainable housing prototypes, community layouts, material samples, a maker's space, a dreamer's laboratory. What is all this? My new focus, he ran his hand along a scale model of what looked like a mixed-use development. I'm designing affordable housing for seniors, integrating sustainable principles, universal design, shared resources. I call it legacy living. I picked up one of the models, examined the thoughtful details, the careful integration of community spaces with private dwellings. This is remarkable. It's just beginning, he said. Preliminary concepts. I'm still learning, still researching, but I wanted you to see that your vision, your persistence, it didn't just change your life, Maya. It changed mine, forced me to reconsider everything I thought I knew about success, development, legacy. Damon leaned against the doorframe, watching this exchange. He's been obsessed, barely sleeps, constantly refining ideas, pricing materials, running energy calculations. Mom practically has to drag him away for meals. I recognized the intensity, the focus, having experienced it myself during those early years building my company, that same driving purpose, that sense of creating something meaningful. Have you considered partnering with a developer to bring these to market? My father hesitated. That's actually why I wanted you to see this today. I'm not looking to compete with Maya sustainable communities, I would never, but I do believe these concepts have value, particularly for an aging population seeking community without institutional settings. I understood what he wasn't directly asking, the careful boundary he was maintaining. Send me the full proposal. We're always looking for innovative approaches to specific demographic needs. This could potentially fit within our expanding portfolio. Relief crossed his face. Thank you. That's all I ask, that it be considered on merit alone. Everything we do is evaluated on merit, I said, then added, but this shows real promise, significant potential. We returned to the main living area, where my mother had prepared lunch, served on the patio overlooking the desert vista, the conversation shifting to project updates, family news, the subtle rebuilding of connections not through obligation but through shared purpose, shared values, a foundation stronger than the one that had crumbled years before. As we prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. There's something else I wanted to discuss. His expression serious. Vanessa. I stiffened slightly. What about her? She's struggling, Maya, he said quietly. Not just financially, but with identity, purpose. She defined herself through status, possessions, position, all gone now. She's lost. That's unfortunate, but I'm not sure what it has to do with me. He nodded, understanding my hesitation. Nothing directly, except that Damon is torn, trying to support her while working for your company, building something he believes in. It's creating tension. I can't solve their marriage problems. No, but you might be able to offer her what you offered us, a chance. Not charity, not forgiveness, just opportunity based on whatever value she might bring. I considered his words, skeptical. What skills does Vanessa have that would benefit my company? She ran the Rodriguez Foundation for years, handled all the charitable giving, community relations, social events. She knows everyone in Arizona society circles, influence makers, decision leaders, people whose support could accelerate acceptance of sustainable development among traditional wealth. It was a perspective I hadn't considered. Vanessa's social connections, her expertise in navigating high society, her understanding of philanthropic structures, potentially valuable in contexts I often avoided. I'll think about it, was all I committed to. That's all I ask, he said. Just consideration. Back in the car, heading toward the construction site, Damon glanced at me. So, what did you think of Dad's big reveal? Impressive, I said honestly. Not just the house, but the conceptual work, the senior housing designs. There's real innovation there. He's different, Maya. Completely transformed. The hard thing changed him, but your influence, your company, your vision, that's what really shifted his perspective. I watched the desert landscape pass outside the window. People can change if they choose to, if they're willing to question their assumptions, re-examine their values. Even Vanessa, he asked quietly. I turned, studied his profile, saw the hope there, the conflict. Has she changed, Damon? Really changed? Or does she just want back what she lost? He sighed. It's complicated. She's trying, in her way, but she doesn't have direction, purpose like Dad found. She's still defining success through external validation. And what does she want from me, specifically? Nothing. She's too proud to ask. But she's drowning, Maya, losing herself. I see it every day. I considered this, the complexity of transformation, how some people leap into reinvention while others resist, cling to old identities even as they crumble. I'm not a rescue service, Damon. I'm running a company with hundreds of employees, investors depending on sound decisions. I know, he said quickly. And I wouldn't suggest anything that didn't make business sense. But her social connections, her experience with high-end clients, her understanding of what motivates traditional wealth to embrace change, it has potential value. I nodded. Dad made the same pitch. I'll consider it, evaluate it objectively, like any other potential resource. We arrived at the construction site, hard hats on, boots in the dust. The conversation shifted to concrete progress, steel rising against the desert sky, solar arrays being positioned, the future taking physical form, our Tucson headquarters. Emerging from vision to reality. That evening, back in my hotel room, I reviewed the day's site reports, contractor updates, market analyses, but my mind kept returning to my father's house, not just the physical structure but what it represented. The tangible evidence that people can transform fundamentally if given reason, purpose, opportunity, the right conditions for growth. I opened my laptop, pulled up Vanessa's social media profile, active even now, showcasing charity events, social gatherings, attempting to maintain the appearance of influence despite reduced circumstances. I studied her background, education, experience, connections, considered potential value objectively, removed from personal history. My phone rang, Eliza's name on the screen. Maya, we have a situation with the National Green Builder Awards Committee. I shifted to business mode immediately. What kind of situation? They're doing background research on our submission. Apparently, someone informed them of your connection to Rodriguez Development, specifically mentioned the environmental violations from their Canyon Creek project 10 years ago, suggesting our company's green commitment might be family marketing, not genuine principles. My stomach tightened. Canyon Creek had been my father's most controversial development, cutting corners on environmental protections, resulting in hefty fines, habitat damage, exactly the kind of project I'd built Maya Sustainable Communities to oppose. Who contacted them? Anonymous, but the timing, with our Tucson expansion, your father's consultancy, Damon's position, it raises questions about possible sabotage from competitors. I considered possibilities, implications. Send me the committee contact information. I'll address it directly. Forward all documentation of our environmental record, independent certifications, impact assessments, everything that demonstrates our legitimate commitment. After hanging up, I paced the room, tension building, the irony acute that my father's past sins could now threaten recognition of my company's genuine achievements, the very reason I'd removed Rodriguez from my business name, to avoid exactly this kind of association. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, heard about the Green Builder Awards situation. What a shame, someone connecting your innovative work with past Rodriguez failures. Perhaps I could help navigate this delicate PR challenge? Vanessa, I stared at the message, understanding dawning, cold and clear. This wasn't coincidence, wasn't random timing, this was calculated. Vanessa creating a problem she could then offer to solve, a manufactured crisis to demonstrate her value. I didn't respond, just forwarded the message to Eliza with instructions to investigate how Vanessa had learned about a situation we'd only just discovered ourselves. The next morning, I canceled my remaining Tucson meetings, flew back to Phoenix. Immediately, gathered my executive team, explained the situation, outlined our response strategy. By afternoon, we had compiled comprehensive documentation of every environmental commitment, verification, measurement, independent certification, our track record speaking for itself. Rather than defensive reaction, I chose transparent engagement. Requesting a personal meeting with the awards committee, sharing complete access to our project data, sustainability metrics, community impact assessments, inviting them to tour any of our developments without notice or preparation. 2 days later, the committee chair called. Ms. Rodriguez, we've completed our review of Maya Sustainable Community's environmental record, credentials, performance metrics. I held my breath, waited for the verdict. Your company's commitment is exemplary, documented, verified, consistent. Across all projects. The anonymous allegations appear to be without merit, possibly motivated by competitive concerns. We've removed the complaint from consideration. Relief washed through me. Thank you for your thoroughness. Actually, she continued, this scrutiny led us to examine your metrics more closely. Your water conservation innovations in desert developments are particularly noteworthy. The committee would like to highlight these specifically in the awards presentation. After hanging up, I sat in my office, watched the Phoenix sunset painting the sky in brilliant orange and purple, thought about integrity, about how transparency requires confidence in your foundations, about how attempting to undermine others only reveals your own instability. My phone buzzed, a text from Damon, heard the good news about the awards committee. Just wanted to say I'm proud to work for a company with nothing to hide. I considered responding, then a second text arrived. Vanessa confessed she was behind. The anonymous tip. Thought creating a problem she could solve would demonstrate her value. I'm so sorry, Maya. I closed my eyes, absorbing this confirmation of my suspicions, opened them to type, not your fault. We build on solid foundations precisely so we can withstand scrutiny. The next day, I received an email, unexpected, formal, from Vanessa. Herself, subject line, formal apology and acknowledgement. Opening it cautiously, I found not excuses, not manipulation, but something surprising. Maya, I made a terrible error in judgment, attempting to manufacture a situation where my skills would appear valuable, causing potential harm to a company built on genuine principles, unlike the superficial values I once championed. I realize now how deeply I misunderstood you, both 9 years ago and today. Your success isn't about winning or status or appearance, it's about creating actual, lasting value, something I'm only beginning to comprehend. I don't expect forgiveness or opportunity, but I did want you to know I recognize my actions for what they were, the desperate flailing of someone who hasn't yet found her own foundation. I am seeking therapy to address these patterns and will be stepping back from any involvement in your professional sphere. Vanessa, I read it twice, unexpected in its self-awareness, its lack of defensive posturing, its acknowledgement without expectation. I didn't respond immediately, needed time to process the complexity of human transformation, how some changes are genuine, evolving from deep realization, while others are tactical, shifting strategies without shifting values. 2 weeks later, at the National Green Builder Awards ceremony, Maya Sustainable Communities received not just recognition but the highest honor for our desert water conservation innovations. As I stood at the podium, looking out at industry leaders, peers, competitors, I thought about the journey, not just from rejection to success, but from imitation to innovation, from reaction to creation. Sustainability isn't just about buildings, I said into the microphone. It's about creating systems that support growth without depletion, relationships that generate energy rather than consume it, futures that expand possibility rather than restrict it. When I founded this company 9 years ago, after being told my vision was impossible, impractical, naive, I wasn't just trying to prove critics wrong. I was trying to prove possibility right, to demonstrate that we can build differently, live differently, succeed differently. I paused, looked at the award gleaming under the stage lights. This recognition belongs to every person who chose to question traditional definitions of success, who decided that impact matters more than impression, who committed to building something lasting rather than something flashy, to everyone who's ever been told their vision is too different, too challenging, too innovative, and chose to pursue it anyway. The applause was gratifying, but what moved me more was the knowledge that somewhere in that audience sat my father, watching not with resentment but with pride, not with competition but with appreciation, the man who had once called me failure. Now learning from my success, not diminished by it but expanded, now designing his own sustainable visions, building his own meaningful legacy. After the ceremony, as photographers captured the moment, industry leaders congratulated me, investors celebrated, my father approached quietly, standing at the periphery of the crowd, not presuming inclusion. I made my way toward him. "You came." He nodded. "I wouldn't have missed it. Remarkable achievement, Maya, truly groundbreaking." "Thank you," I said, then added, "Your legacy living concept was approved by our board yesterday. We'd like to develop a pilot project in Tucson, incorporate it into our portfolio as a specialized division." His eyes widened. "Truly? Based on merit?" "Entirely on merit. The designs are innovative, the market research solid, the concept fills a growing need for sustainable senior living that maintains dignity, community, purpose, exactly the kind of project Maya Sustainable Communities wants to champion." He blinked rapidly, emotion breaking through his usual reserve. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll lead the division, bring your vision to reality." "It would be an honor," he said simply. A photographer approached, asked for a picture. I hesitated, just briefly, then stood beside my father, both of us framed against the backdrop of sustainable innovation, the past and future connecting not through obligation but through shared vision, shared values, the photographer capturing not reconciliation exactly, but something more meaningful, collaboration built on respect. Later that night, back in my penthouse, I stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights, thinking about definitions, about how 9 years ago they had defined me as failure, had limited me with their expectations, had rejected me for challenging their certainty. Now they define themselves differently, through contribution, innovation, sustainability. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena Suarez, the architecture student I'd met at Harmony Heights. "Ms. Rodriguez, I just wanted to thank you again for the internship opportunity. Working with your design team has transformed my understanding of what's possible in sustainable development." I smiled, typed back, "Talent deserves opportunity. Innovation needs fresh perspectives. Keep challenging assumptions, questioning traditions, that's how we build better futures." Setting down my phone, I looked again at the city stretched before me, the physical manifestation of collective choices repeated millions of times, building, demolishing, preserving, transforming. Somewhere in that landscape stood the former Rodriguez estate, now Harmony Heights, vibrant with community life. Somewhere my father's sustainable house nestled in the desert hills, showcasing his transformation. Somewhere Damon led community meetings for our Tucson project, bridging old connections with new visions. They had called me the family failure. Had rejected my path, my ideas, my worth, had tried to define me through their limitations. But in that rejection, they had inadvertently set me free to define success differently, to build something authentic, meaningful, lasting, to create not just buildings but possibility, not just company but community, not just profit but purpose. Standing there under the vast desert sky, stars piercing the darkness, I whispered, sometimes the greatest gift is being underestimated. It forces you to build foundations strong enough to support not just your dreams but your truths. 9 years ago, I had stood alone in a restaurant parking lot, clutching an envelope that was supposed to end my story. Now I stood at the center of a new narrative, one I had written myself, brick by brick, choice by choice, value by value. The greatest revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right, not through bitterness but through brilliance, not through retaliation but through reinvention, not by diminishing others but by elevating possibility for everyone. My family had called me failure, but failure was never my destiny. It was merely a door closing so I could build something better, something real, something mine. They called me the family failure, but what they never understood is that labels only stick if you accept them. What they never realized is that rejection can be the first step toward authenticity. What they never imagined is that sometimes being cast out is actually being set free. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Have you turned that doubt into your driving force? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.